Welcome everyone to another Linux update. Similar to our previous critical thinking, of course, some shit happened again, of course, to me always. Oh man, yeah, working from home, right? As one does these days, my epic thread ripping Ryzen workstation, and I wanted to test a kernel update, and I even wanted to pre-test this, running this in QEMU, right? Because not remote booting your precious workstation. So it looks like kernel as like QEMU somehow crashed my kernel, panicked my workstation. Just single address space monolithic kernel. It never happened to me, but just when you are not close to your office, then you apparently panic your workstation. Of course, I should have better remote management stuff, but in entry-level workstation stuff, you don't have advanced light-out management stuff. Previous video, and I even have this ASUS Pro WS X570 Ace or so, previous video that has remote management stuff, but it's such low quality. It's even running Linux, but previous video so low quality, most people agree it's unusable stuff, right? And they even in GPL violations, I made a video earlier, maybe in January this year. Also, ASUS didn't answer to me. Maybe I should actually write a follow-up or file a lawsuit, because I actually would want to use this management, right? So in summary, there is a 200 to maybe 400 megahertz MIPS, 32-bit MIPS CPU in there. Also, now we had some outage, fun stuff. So there is a 400, maybe 400 megahertz MIPS, 32-bit MIPS CPU in there as coprocessor that can restart and stuff, but nobody is using that. I also didn't have time to further reverse engineer that or make good use of it. But long story short, so this to summary, to make this stuff better, I wonder, similar to my previous videos, we had the Linux kernels basically not impressed by the default stuff. This is somehow showing that Linux kernels developed by hobbyists like Linus Torvalds, who barely worked in a serious company. The defaults are at times strange, and I wonder why Reddit and SUSE and broken Oracle Linux don't have better defaults, like rebooting, right? So, and I mean, the thing is, I mean, this is mostly stable, which is obviously why most companies base their business on Linux. I also wanted to show oops, right? So obviously some oops, right? You know how this. Who raise your hand? How often did you had an oops, right? Except not, what is it? Kernel panic off. Yeah, and so to better the stuff today in the long term, I, of course, professional, you should only run stuff with advanced light out management, remote management stuff, right? But yeah, YOLO, whatever, we have only this cheap 300 something euro or so epic thread ripping PC vendor stuff. So that is also a problem, right? Windows and all the YouTube overclocking stuff, like you have overclocking and gazillions of graphical BIOS stuff, and at the end of the day, the stuff that you professionals need, remote booting and stuff is like, yeah. Of course, you could low-tech, so what would be the solution? You could low-tech have there a switchable power supply to connecting this to your router with USB or whatnot. And I actually was considering this already for our broken Vodafone failed DOCSIS modem. So how could we better this stuff today otherwise? Because at times it happens. So what would already be an improvement, and leave in the comments below how often did you have kernel panics in your production stuff or in general. And I wonder if we shouldn't auto reboot this stuff by default. And that brings two questions. Where did I even, why do I not had, I thought I had this open, pretty close that. There is a configuration for that to, I mean, of course, if the Linux kernel is that dead that nothing works, you can't reboot anymore. But I wonder is, why is the default not like, as you're at kernel panic, impossible to remote connect, like obviously do, right? And also, yeah, obviously do whatever. I mean, I've only run QEMU on QEMU, snapshot, HDA, dev, NVMe, something. I wanted, the irony is I wanted to test boot this in QEMU, not to remote boot my workstation and not have so workstations. The irony is testing that in QEMU kernel panicked something. So what I wanted to double check is now so much to double checking this stuff. But going forward, I wonder with our T2 Linux distribution, right? Making the defaults in T2 the best, obviously, right? I could review other Linux distributions, what they do, but I'm considering changing the default panic behavior of reboot after 60 seconds. 60 seconds because, and leave in the comments below, like why, this is kind of stuff, why is the Linux kernel not doing this by default? Maybe 30 years ago on a 386 or 486 and stuff like we need to guru meditate that of Linus Torvalds of like, due my single address-based monolithic Linux kernel is broken, let's guru meditate about the dump of registers and backtrace and stuff. And otherwise, I would say in professional stuff, like 99% of the time, do you not want this stuff to reboot and continue? And yes, in 20 years, even with my extensive low-level development, I didn't had it that often. I mean, sure, I have it on like on a P3, like unless I work on something like the P3 or so, or SG10. Then I have it on my desk and obviously can press reset. But should we not change this? And then like 60 seconds for, like if you sit there and you want to see that, I think 60 seconds is fair. I would even say, okay, maybe 120 seconds is fair of make a photo or guru meditate this. Like it's something like that, like not instant, so that if you are close to the system, you have a chance to guru meditate on it or like take a freaking 2022 debugging of photo with your phone. And like 60 seconds, I think would normally be enough, I would say. And then how do we change this? Sure, you can add this in your bootloader. The problem with those stuff is you need to actively enable that, right? And I wonder, so what would you say is the best thing? The problem is with kernel parameter, also it's a little bit funny on your bootloader grub2, it's like, yeah, not Lilo, not Yaboot, not Zilo, not syslinux. Like why do they write this as if this are the only bootloaders? I can't do this with any like embedded stuff like U-boot, right? So kernel parameter, I mean, sure, we could, the problem is then the kernel parameter stuff becomes relatively verbose and you could accidentally delete that. And also the same goes for etc syscontrol. We could add this to the default etc syscontrol, which I, by the way, think, fun fact, we don't even have. And then the same applies. You would not have this in the initRD in case something sometimes panics. I mean, if it always panics on initRD, then don't have a chance. Or other early boot stuff, panic on file system check or other stuff that might go through the second time if you're lucky. And this similar stuff of you need to have this file there, and which you may not necessarily have an embedded setup, so like you would use T2 for. So I'm kind of inclined to patch that. Leave in the comments below what you think. And this is kind of why. I mean, maybe Fedora ships that, is it? Red Hat ships that, IBM Red Hat ships that with that default configured. I have no idea. I also, the point is I can't download all the Linux distributions and test install, test boot them. There is no point, right? I wonder, of course, for a minute, what do the big broken, Oracle broken, Linux distributions do? But at the end of the day, it is more, it's basically pointless. Even if some have a syscontrol default, at the end of the day, the question is, what do we consider the most usable, the most stable, the most easy to use? Why is this advertisement stuff so shitty there? Yeah, that is the final question. What is the best solution? And the bootloader, I would say, nah, that is too... If we would have everything in the bootloader, we would have so much random stuff. I would say the bootloader stuff should be mostly clear. Also, we would need to have this in each bootloader, of which we have also many. So I'm inclined to, similar to other stuff, we already changed some default stuff. The Graverheads has this default in the kernel config. So you also actively have changed this, right? You're saying there is a kernel config for that. Interesting. I wanted to grep for that in a second. What do we even have here? Something. This is not the latest. Halt and so kernel testing. You say there is, what would be the panic? I hear some panic timeout. Config panic on oops. Interesting. So the question is, we don't even need to patch that. Panic on oops value. I guess that needs to be set then. But yeah, this is this kind of stuff. That is the difference between what did I... Maybe I didn't fully extract this. I control Z that because this was scrolling too long. So yeah, leave in the comments below what you think this is. I mean, this is the difference between a professional operating system and like this is basically where experience and like years and years of practice and thinking add up. But yeah, thanks for that. I actually wanted to patch that. That is of course slightly easier. The only thing is we have this set of configurations for all the architectures, and we source those, so we only need to set those once, except a couple of those which are hard-coded. And yeah, this is also the stuff that's theoretically in a microkernel with Minix. They have this even restartable drivers, which even today they're like AMD further investigating or bringing GPU reset and restart stuff. And no, Tux love you're not missing all of this. You missed the introduction. And yeah, so the amazing stuff like the community comments here saved me, well, except the summary took me, hey, 10 minutes. So it's like not really saving that, but nonetheless, amazing community comments. And so yeah, you set this, so degraver, you set this because you had this a couple of times? I mean, in production, I didn't had so many kernel panics, but as like today, shit always happens in the worst moment when you're like, I mean, thankfully it's not the primary server stuff, it's only my software development workstation. But it's also crazy that this was the latest stable series kernel, and it is crazy that apparently I was only running QEMU, right? And from so something must, yeah. But I mean, you see the changes in QEMU, right? So many changes, they constantly. I have to say, bugs in QEMU have rarely bitten me, but if you see all those changes, like fix that, fixed another, fixed interrupts, fix this and that, and then it's like, yeah, with all the fixes, like eventually, yeah, there was some corner case that panicked, oops. And the crazy thing is, this will not fix this stuff even 99% of the time, right? If you have like a real deadlock or other bugs and stuff that do not panic properly, then this would anyway not fix us. For that, we would still need to pry the GPL violating remote management code out of ASUS there. Where was it even? Was it runtime testing or not? Where is even, was it not, was it, what was the search thing? It could also be that, or that comes from streaming on, it is, don't tell me, wait a second. Somehow, screen, oh, wait a second. I hate when this happens. I somehow screen locked this. Screen. What was a search? Search a slash. What did I use? I'm not sure. So what did you even say? You said either panic, boot run. So yeah, did I mention? So yeah, if this stuff otherwise deadlocks, then this doesn't help you much anyway. But at least if this is a 50+% chance, there is panic on oops value. How was it? Well, this is like 8. Okay, so this is, I think this is useful to ensure that the kernel does not do anything erroneous after an oops, which could result in data corruption. So you probably don't necessarily want that, because I had oopses with, that is a little bit evil. I mean, this is, if you like IBM mainframe or stuff, but the crazy thing is I get at times oops on normal operation, right? For example, the AMD, I don't have the box here, the AMD RDNA2, the, what is it, RX or so, what did I have, 6700, whatever, that still oopses, probably even with the latest kernel with some I2C display, data channel stuff, super crazy stuff. So yeah, you probably don't want to have that on your playing along at home, and that should probably wait forever. Yeah. So this default apparently, is it equal 0? Does it mean equal 0 is the default? So yeah, we probably want that. That's a little bit easier than I thought. I thought we need to patch the default. But yeah, leave in the comments below if you watch this later. And we will now change that. We should, so basically, I mean, this is also the last years, right? The more remote work that you do, the more, like after 2 years, eventually, like, do that really happens a couple of times. It's really too annoying. But leave in the comments below. I mean, what could possibly go wrong, right? I mean, worst case, this should be mostly a win. Of course, I can imagine with some worst case scenarios where you have file system corruption and you auto reboot and you get even more file system corruption. But otherwise, if it's some random stuff like your Intel AMD GPU or, God forbid, binary only NVIDIA driver, some reboot on oops should, or panic, should actually the Grabber asked 515. Yeah, the 515, if this was 515, of course I said I had 5. This is not the workstation, right? I still need to have, I'm not in Berlin today. I need someone, as it's like the cost of running Linux, I need someone to press a freaking reset button the next days. This is just some config. If you mean this config, this was just the next best config here. This is another file server. And so ironically, this happened while I'm certainly aware that 5.17. So ironically, this just happened when I wanted to update to 5.17 on this workstation. I was thinking, like, should I really do it? I actually wanted to performance test the new AMD P-State, or what they call it, driver, and see if there's a performance change. So I was thinking, like, should I really reboot this? Like, yeah, let's better test boot it in QA mode. It's like, I couldn't even, I mean, I should have known better. I was thinking, like, but yeah, you think about this, should I really reboot my workstation when I'm not there in the office the next day? This is like, I should not have done. And yeah, professional testing this in QA mode, I could totally not imagine, like, I can't remember, I mean, not even on the freaking PS3 QA mode oopsed on me. So it's like, yeah, but worst case stuff will go wrong, right? If there's some worst case stuff that can go wrong, so stuff will go wrong. Yeah, nice to have. Let's maybe put this here somewhere at the end of this stuff. Probably should be config. And let's maybe, so yeah, what time do we use? I mean, basically it doesn't matter too much. I would say it shouldn't be, but also this is like, if you are in a company, like either a company or even professional open source project, this is the thought process, right? Even, of course, you could obviously think, like, it only takes 1 minute, but you should think about this, and summarizing this on YouTube obviously takes some minutes longer, but you need to think, what are the consequences? What is worst case? Sure, there are always some worst case stuff. Then the pros and cons, what weights more? I would say in this case, the pros of your, if you have the data center, your network interface chip acts up, your RAID storage stuff or NVMe stuff acts up, or is there just a typo or some even network bug, someone tries to brute force your network traffic and that results in some oops instead of wider security issue. It's like instead of totally deadlocking, I would say the chances should be over 50%, if not, I don't know, maybe from experience, total deadlocks are relatively rare. Of course, they can happen. I would give this maybe a 80% chance or even 90% chance of usually catching panics. I would say the only question is, I sometimes saw machine check exceptions. I'm not sure if machine, like if you have some undervolted or overclocked or otherwise thermally limited, like default voltage and clock, but like a fan failing and stuff overheating. I even had this. I had in a data center a fan breaking. We had in a data center a heatsink falling off. No kidding. Heatsink of a source bridge some 10 years ago. So you would get for some of the stuff machine check exceptions, even for stuff as old as IDT WinChip 2 previous video from 20 plus years ago. Had even, of course not for everything, but for internal inconsistency errors of the circuits malfunctioning or catching error conditions. I'm not entirely sure if that would always panic. I mean, some of the stuff panics, but we can't change it, right? And we could only patch it later if the next time in production we see machine check exceptions due to whatever, to change this also to panic if not. But yeah, so my point is, I would argue if you work locally, you might want to see it, especially if it doesn't end up in the syslog, which probably often it will not, which is also sad. Basically, we should work on our microkernel. So I would argue 60 seconds is like locally you can see it, especially if you develop on something, then 60 seconds probably should be enough. Longer might be annoying. We could make this 120, like 2 minutes. But then it's a time of something remote crashed and you wonder for 2 minutes, will it come back up? So I would say maybe 1 minute should be enough, hopefully. Where did I delete this already? So data is building here in the background. So I would hope that should work. Should this work with 2 builds in parallel? I would hope it should work. Not sure how we skipped that. Just to test that. Yeah, so that is the sorts. Basically, why is the syntax error of others is bloody debug? Oh, God, makes this stuff up. I would hope this is fixed in, this might, oh wait, this is in reference. Maybe it still needs to be fixed or not installed. I think theoretically we should probably improve also. You see, software and hardware is never finished. Theoretically, we probably should change our profile stuff to sort T shell and other shells there and include only some of the files. So yeah, what comments do we have? So basically test building that. So yeah, but you see, we're still here, we're still optimizing our funny little Linux distribution. Actually, that reminds me, we theoretically have also some stuff to work on. What if we're trying to bring Windows 2000 from what kernel, right? Trying to bring Windows, Win Linux 2000? What the heck? What they're freaking doing? Vintage and retro font for some? John Kuhn writes, they were overclocking their memory, was a lot of hardware errors, machine check exceptions. Yeah, I've seen this also from overclocking memory, even obviously undervolting, optimizing performance boost, PBO, is it AMD performance is it optimization or overdrive, right? Performance precision boost. No, I forget all the freaky marketing terms, doesn't matter. Yeah, so this kind of stuff. I also, where else? Yeah, stuff like that. Or running older CPUs is not yet as thermally boost limiting, overheating with cooling and stuff. Where was the open, closed? Where was the sort by last comment of news? Mostly recently updated. So yeah, that here and that. So that is a nice thing. The only thing is I updated that in the meantime. I saw the bug. But yeah, this is also the thing, right? Making money with open source projects, especially Linux distribution, and the only thing you get is free support. And which is also why we do those funny live streams. So we updated that. So why am I not signed in? Wait a second. Back in a second. Yeah, I need to be increasingly careful not to leak passwords, obviously, because some of this maybe cookie expired, who knows. So while this is maybe building, so let's close that. So there, close with comments. This was due to introspection. I hope that fixes that. And so this is also the crazy stuff. People using T2. I mean, it's of course a good thing that they cross-compile on other lesser Linuxes like Ubuntu or Windows subsystem for Linux. Which is that, by the way? So, wait a second. This is a comment. Okay, so this was already older, but someone commented 4 hours ago. Ubuntu Linuxy doesn't work. Seems like some too. Because I mean, we could reply here. How does it work? To oops. Possible find. Linux. Which is, this is Linux kernel. I have the suspicion that might be our config using KCC here, which you don't have. I think this is a regression. I think I changed that like recently, in like maybe last 6 months or so, or not too long ago, 6 or 8 months or something of that sort. Maybe a year for, I think, mostly RISC-32 or PowerPC. I think the problem was the kernel headers were not correctly built for exporting the ABI. And so previously we didn't run this config like that, and that didn't result in the kernel headers being built properly for cross-building with 32 versus 64-bit and host versus guest CPU or host versus target CPU. So this might technically be a regression. Oops. Come on. And so this is the very first thing we could probably, so the problem is, and this kind of stuff, recurring theme, right? Making money with this stuff, and then you sit here day after day at night and can't feed the family. And because I can't also additionally, also in this wrapper, okay, that sort of, what did we build that did we, I can't waste hours of installing Ubuntu and Windows subsystem for Linux. But I think we could, I mean, it's the best guess, but of course they don't have KCC, so we could actually test it like that. That is 1616. Let's see if this, we had there equals 60. Let's see if that is in there. Panic on oops, value. I slightly wonder why this value is there, but anyway. Yeah, leave in the comments below. Do you think that is a good idea? We certainly will find out. What eventually, you see, there is so much to do, which recurring. The other day, someone became a new Patreon, which is totally amazing. Can't stress enough that I'm very happy and motivated about each Patreon and YouTube member and GitHub sponsor and stuff. Not to mention OnlyFans. Cheers. And because even with this kernel configs, I think we could clean or improve this by sorting this. We have the shared config and then per architecture overlays of architecture specific stuff that like dedicated south bridges, IO controllers for HPPA or MIPS64 and stuff so that your keyboard and mouse works and stuff, or other ABI and boot configurations. But I was thinking some have custom stuff like AVR32 or like other maybe Armos or whatever. So I was thinking we could even further improve this by having like a shared minimal configuration, for example. But you see, the possibilities endless. You could always fix that, clean up that, work on that. For today we have, speaking of MIPS64. So, okay, MIPS64 we don't want to commit. Commit the shared thing. Improved default Linux kernel to reboot. Try to reboot after panic. Something of that sort. Yeah, probably another one-line quality of life improvement brought to you here. So theoretically, what did I say? Do we have another checkout here? Maybe that one. That probably will need quite some updates because I'm usually not working on the server. What did I want to say? I wanted to say Linux kernel config. No, this is usual. What devs in? What does it say? Oh. I wanted to say what was it? So much to holding on my sword. Kernel config. There's one more thing I saw. What the heck was it? This KCC thing. So yeah, maybe that's it for this. We could maybe better mix the second video to optimize the viewership and stuff. So I hope you learned this as something as usual. Leave in the comments below what is your experience, how many crashes, panics, oopses do you have with a single address space monolithic Linux kernel. Do you think that's a good idea? I mean, hopefully you don't need it often, but once a year in the worst is as usual. If once in a year you need it, in worst case. Timing and scenario. As always, hope you learned something. Leave me some comments below, and we go live again in a minute to test this one stuff service KCC to see how we can somehow